The Bengals picked up their first win of the season on Monday night. And for more on Joe Burrow, the offense, and what was a disruptive defense, let's welcome in Tony Pike from Cincinnati's ESPN 1530. Catch him on Cincy 360 every single weekday, noon to 3 on Twitter at Tony underscore Pike 15. By the way, I'm James Rapien, and this is Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Tony, let's start with Joe Burrow. And a lot of this is going to be, I think, on Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
What are your overall thoughts on his performance? Because my main takeaway, and I always do this winners and losers column for all Bengals, it started with him being a winner because of all of the talk. I mean,
Yeah.
a week ago, people thought he was going on injured reserve and going to miss 4 games or more. He was out there. He wasn't his normal self, but he did put the Bengals in position to win. I was impressed by Joe Burrow. What were your thoughts, being someone that has obviously played the position at a high level?
Yeah, I thought it was just a unique buildup to the game, right? From last week when he could barely walk to midfield to shake Lamar Jackson's hand to re-aggravating the injury to the golf cart ride with Mike Brown to the Bengals over the weekend signing AJ McCarron. Everything, in my opinion, was pointing to him not playing.
Mhm.
And then you get the report early on Monday morning that barring a setback, he's going to be going. But for me, that this is always going to be about what are the limitations. I have been very open to when I've talked in the past about Zach Taylor as a play caller, not Zach Taylor as a coach, because I think he is a phenomenal coach from a culture standpoint, from a leadership standpoint. But I've questioned a lot of the play calling, and you're now asking a play caller to essentially coach with one hand tied behind his back because Joe Burrow is not 100%. So the aspect of Joe Burrow going out there and playing through it and playing tough and making the throws that he needs to make and doing just enough, I thought is a huge step forward. I thought the biggest step forward was the fact that he spoke after the game that there was no setback, even
Mhm.
though he threw the ball 49 times, which is absolutely incredible to me. But no setback. They find a way to win. Those to me are the two biggest wins, and Joe Burrow is a catalyst for a lot of that.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest shock of the night. Not that they won, not that Burrow played. 49 throws,
Yeah,
and Zach Taylor after the game saying that some of those were RPOs, and fair, but that's a ton. And so I do want to get to the running game. But if I had given you, I know you do over unders a ton on Cincy
yeah.
360, you talk about odds. If I would have put it at like 27 and a half passes for Joe Burrow at 8:04 p.m. Eastern time on Monday night, would you have taken the over or the under?
No, probably the under. Because you just we like leading up to warmups, he was tossing, he wasn't really ripping anything, and even throughout the game, as good as he is in that short intermediate zone, there was nothing down the field that looked natural. It
Mhm.
looked like it was a struggle. Balls landing 5 or 6 yards out of bounds. Now, as the game went on, he was able to complete a couple. One on the seam route down the middle of the tight end, another one on a rollout to Jamar Chase, which I thought to me was the best throw of the night because he left the pocket. He was
Mhm.
able to play action, get out of the pocket, and make a throw down the field. I talked so much about going into the game 0 for 12 going into last night on throws 15 yards or more down the field. Well, he completed some of those throws, but 49 times. I guess if you're going to test to see if the calf can hold up, you go and do it 49 times against the Los Angeles Rams, which I get because it is so hard to run against an Aaron Donald led defensive front. But I would have certainly had the under at 27 and a half.
Yeah, I would have too. And a big reason why he threw it that many times was to get Jamar Chase involved before we get to the run game. And I do want to ask you about the defense. But Jamar Chase, 12 receptions, 141 yards, was just really dominant, I thought,
Yeah,
and played at a high level. The slant where Burrow puts it behind him on purpose so it doesn't lead him into the safety, making that play, for example, that's all hands, being able to stop and turn.
yeah.
What did you think about Jamar Chase's performance? And how did the Bengals, did they do anything different this week to get him
Well,
involved? Because he had 10 catches in 2 games, and then he
right.
has 12 catches on Monday night.
I thought it was a quiet yardage production night too, because it felt like so much of his stuff was just short, intermediate throws. So, the fact that they're able to go and and not only find him, but give him room on some of those plays to catch and then make extra yards after the catch. It's one thing when he's running those outs and he's magical on the sideline getting his feet in bounds, but I think they really found something, at least last night, by putting him in the slot. He essentially, in my opinion, was unguardable in the slot because it was putting either linebackers or safeties in a coverage situation. The Rams are going to try to play a lot of zone defense. The fact that he was able in the slot to get a free release, find the middle part of that zone, and then make yards after the catch, to me, I think is the next step for this offense and for Jamar Chase. If Joe Burrow is not going to be able to go 1, 2, 3 hitch and drive that ball 30 or 40 yards down the field, what's the next step? What's the evolution? And I thought last night putting Jamar Chase in the slot a ton was a good step forward because to this point, the Rams couldn't figure out. I don't know how you guard this team on offense if Jamar Chase plays that many snaps in the slot.
It was certainly great to see getting him involved. He made huge impact. The one play that the most explosive play and was a game changing play, the 43-yarder where they did roll out
Yeah,
on the boot, Joe Burrow.
we'll
What
call
did
it a
you see
rollout. Yeah,
there? Yeah, you call it a roll. That was the Tony Pike rollout. I feel
yeah,
like
yeah. Just a
UC
half
days,
roll.
not the
Well,
Joe Burrow rollout.
the thing for me is that Burrow, like he did not look comfortable wanting to roll out of the pocket, but it just shows you when you just dink and dunk all night, the defense eventually is going to do what? They're going to start biting and they're going to start playing more aggressive.
Yeah,
I was listening a little bit last night on the Lewis Riddick was talking. He's like they have to throw a double move at some point. They have to throw a double move because the Rams, by nature, when you're just getting kind of dink and dunk down the field, you eventually have
yeah.
to come up and be more aggressive. And I thought they timed it up so well to get Joe Burrow out of the pocket, which means he buys a little bit more time. And then Jamar Chase inside stem works back outside. It reminds you really quickly why people see him as one of the top receivers in the NFL because of what he can do. Now, can Joe Burrow get time? Can he make those throws going forward is a big question. But you see just how fast it can happen with Jamar Chase when he does that last night.
Joe Mixon averaged 3.4 yards a carry, 19 attempts. Obviously, had the 14-yard touchdown that gave the Bengals their first lead and ultimately put them ahead for good. I thought he ran really hard the first two
Yeah.
weeks. Last night, I thought it was going to be one of those games where it was a Joe Mixon game and 85, 90 yards, 100 yards. Why do you think they struggled to get the ground game going? Was it a Rams thing? Was it a
Yeah,
Bengals thing? What did you see?
I think a lot of it is Aaron Donald. And again, if you're the Rams and you're coming in all week and you had heard what Joe Burrow might play, he might not play, wouldn't your idea be to make things difficult on Joe Burrow, which would be, hey, let's be aggressive at stopping the run. Let's force them into passing situations. And there were times last night that I thought maybe they could have been more patient. I think with 10 minutes or so left in the game, they had just picked up a first down, moving it into Rams territory, and then Burrow throws the interception, which was a great interception, by the way. But I thought at that point, 1st and 10, Rams territory, start working the clock, start using a little bit more of Joe Mixon in the running game. And I do think his numbers got skewed a little bit late because everyone in the world knew that the Bengals were just going with a 10-point lead, they're going to try to run the
Yes,
ball. So you had a
agreed.
couple negative runs because the Rams sold out that way. But if I'm a defensive coordinator against the Bengals right now, the last thing I'm going to do is let Joe Mixon run for 4 or 5 yards a pop because that makes it easier on Joe Burrow. The more you
Mhm.
can line up to stop Joe Mixon in the backfield, the more you put Joe Burrow in second and third and long situations, which right now with where his calf is a win for the defense. Even on the touchdown run, that was a blitz that the Bengals just caught the Rams in the right move and they over pursued a little bit and Joe Mixon made a great cut. But I do think it's a concerted effort from the Rams defense last night to say we're not going to let 4 or 5 yards in a cloud of dust happen when Joe Burrow's dealing with that.
And that's probably the argument too that Burrow made on those RPOs and that
Right.
Zach would say, "Hey, that's why we threw it 49 times." And that's it is going to be interesting. Before I ask you about the defense, how sustainable is this
Yeah, it's
offense? Is it I had someone tell me after the first quarter, like they cannot keep doing this. Like it's and that was just one
yeah.
quarter. The Titans have 4 quarters of film. The deep ball to Chase, like they've seen it now. So how much do you expect the Bengals offense, or do the Bengals need to evolve on offense, even with
Yeah.
a less than 100% Joe Burrow this week in Tennessee?
They're gonna have to continue to evolve, or else it will get tougher because, this is a copycat league, and, there's a reason that there are upsets every week in the NFL. I know personnel matters, but you can't tell me the Arizona Cardinals are a better football team than the Dallas Cowboys, and we saw them handle Dallas by 12. There are defenses now. This is the NFL. Defenses are now gonna say, "All right, we've seen enough. I'm not going to let you dink and dunk the ball down the field. If Jamar Chase is going to line up in the slot, we're going to put a defender over him, and we're going to make things tough. Because until Joe Burrow can show the rest of the NFL that he can move in a pocket, escape when he needs to, and make throws, that they're going to see a lot more pressure. How many times it just looked clunky last night? It looked
Mhm.
uncomfortable whenever there was pressure at Joe Burrow. There were times where he could, you think, get out of the pocket, and he chose not to. He chose to kind of, to spike the ball or throw it into the ground,
Yep.
or
The
throw
Tom
the ball out
Brady.
of bounds. Yeah, it was a business decision in a lot of ways last night. That I'm just not at a point yet where I can plan on that leg and escape a non-football or non-quarterback related movement. So if they don't evolve, teams are going to load the box, teams are going to pressure Joe Burrow, and teams are going to say, "Hey, unless you can hit one or two down the field on us, or you got to put something behind it, we're going to make you do that. We're not
Mhm.
going to make this easy." And I do think to an extent the Rams made it easy last night. Though Jamar Chase, when lined up in the slot, was getting free release. You're letting one of the best receivers in football get off the line with no one prohibiting any part of his movement. I thought
Mhm.
that was a miss from the Rams. But look what happened Sunday. The Colts beat the Ravens. So going into last night, everyone in the North is 2-1. It was about just winning. And I know we're going to talk about the defense. The offense did just enough to win. And you take that and you run with it. And now you got to figure out how to do it again and do it again.
Mhm.
And before the bye, the schedule is a little bit more favorable for this Bengals team. After the bye, you're going to have to figure out a whole different strategy going forward.
No doubt. And yeah, this week it's odd. It reminds me of last year within a 4-day span. They win in New York. 4 days later, they beat the Dolphins, and they're 2-2.
Yeah,
And they can do it here in a 6-day span. And obviously, we're on calf watch. But if they're going to go to Tennessee and win, I think a big part of it has to be this defense doing what they did to
yeah,
Matt Stafford, getting after Stafford. 6 sacks. There were multiple sacks that were wiped out by penalty. One on Sam Hubbard, which was stupid because it wasn't a face mask. It was a bad call there, in my opinion. But Trey Hendrickson, 2 sacks. BJ Hill had a sack. Dax Hill blitzing off the edge. Hubbard got a sack. And Reeder, probably with the biggest sack,
yeah,
because it, instead of first and goal at the 2, the Rams second and goal at the 11 kind of set
yeah.
the tone for the
Settle for
day.
field goal.
What did you think about this defensive performance top to bottom? Because this is obviously the best they've played all season.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple things. I think one, I thought they did a great job on Puka, who had taken the NFL by storm. Two, I was concerned going into the game because it was a Sean McVay coached offense against the Bengals' young secondary. And say what you want, there was a lot of opening in that defense in the middle of the field against the Baltimore Ravens. And Deshaun
Mhm.
Watson just missed a ton of throws in week one, as did Joe Burrow with the weather. So I was still wondering, okay, let me see more of the secondary. I was concerned, even without Cooper Cup last night, of what a McVay offense and the formations and the motions was going to do to the secondary. I thought they held up extremely, extremely well. And they took advantage of injuries and guys missing on that offensive line of the Rams. I watched training camp this year, and a majority of my reports was that Trey Hendrickson, I thought, had one of the most individually dominant training camps I've ever watched at any
Mhm.
position. The defensive line dominated all training camp, and the Bengals' offensive lines played really well up to this point.
I
But
agree.
the defense won every single day, and then the first 2 weeks they just didn't show up. And I know it's good schemes on the other end, but the way they were getting the ball ran on them was surprising to me. The way they weren't able to get after the passer. Lamar Jackson's jersey was clean after that Ravens game last week. I thought they finally got to the defense that I envisioned them being. I think this can be an elite defense. And it starts with Trey Hendrickson, and you see Logan Wilson's impact. If the secondary can continue to get better, we know they have athletes, we know they have youth and talent. Can they get better as a unit? because I do think the front four can be dominant and it allows those linebackers to play in space, which is very dangerous. But easily the best defensive performance of the season. And I thought in that second half, Trey Hendrickson was honestly unblockable.
Yeah, it felt that way, and that's what they need. I think this defense is still finding itself a bit, but you're seeing that they still have it, right?
Yeah,
Reader makes the play, Hendrickson, Wilson with the 2 picks. What I'm excited about, Dax Hill. I
yeah,
think he's been great through 3 weeks. He's a sure-handed tackler. I mean, you have Higbee in the open field on 3rd down, running a crosser,
yeah, right
and
with him.
how many safety right with him and makes the tackle right away. Fine, you caught it. I can give up 6 yards. I can't give up 12. The blitz off the edge.
Yeah,
I think he's been. I like Bates a lot, and I'm not saying he's Bates, but I think in year 2, Jesse Bates, we were wondering how he would be as a tackler.
yeah,
We're not questioning that about Dax Hill. Now, I'm not saying Hill has the range or the deep
sure.
safety technique that Bates had, but I think he brings a different element. I think he's more versatile, and we certainly see that athleticism.
And I think now the schedule helps them a lot
Mhm.
because if you think of great passing attacks, the next one they're going to face is right before the bye in Seattle. And Seattle's got a bunch with Metcalf and Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and they have talent all over the field. But I'm looking right now and I'm saying, okay, washout in week 1 with the weather. I thought the Ravens exploited a lot of the middle of the field against the Bengals. They were much better last night, and now you get a couple winnable opportunities. Tennessee has not been doing much offensively to find success. The Arizona Cardinals, I know they just beat Dallas, but they are a team that is supposedly in rebuild mode, and that's Joshua Dobbs throwing passes. I
Yeah.
think you feel good about how the matchups shape up going forward when you talk about getting this secondary more reps because we know it wasn't there in the preseason. There's no live reps in the preseason. So getting them more game reps, and I'm not saying you go and this team can't throw on us, but Tennessee wants to run the ball.
Mhm.
Arizona wants to run the ball. So I do think there are opportunities out there now for this Bengals team to get some more of those secondary reps when you start to look at that Seattle game and then the second half of the season where you're going to see some teams that are going to throw the ball around.
He's Tony Pike. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Tony_Pike15. Also, check out his show, Cincy 360, every single weekday, noon to 3 on ESPN 1530 and the iHeartRadio app. Tony, I appreciate the time, and I'm sure I'll be bugging you again soon. Thank you.
Can't wait, James. Thanks for having me.